the Doom series. Now, I'm not going to talk about the series as a whole, not this time round. No, right now I'm just going to tell you about the Doom Guy part of the franchise. Although it has been confirmed at this point that Doom Guy and Doomslayer were the same person, um, there was people who didn't know, and it wasn't confirmed until Doom Eternal came out. But this is basically essentially the first four titles in the Doom franchise. Now, I'm sure that there's some of you who would wonder by the titling of Doom 3, but, and there could be some thought about that, so let me explain some of that away. You see, when Doom came out in 1993, and I was just a freshman in college, it was not expected to be as big as it ended up being. And I suppose the mix of religion and sci-fi worked to its advantage there. And it became so popular. I mean, I first saw it on somebody else's computer, and my computer couldn't handle it at the time. I mean, in all honesty, my computer was didn't have much of a hard drive either. But I eventually jumped on the bandwagon. Although my first official Doom game that I owned was actually Doom 2, which came out in 1994. It had properly utilized the shareware market well and introduced us to these creatures. And Doom Guy never really got a name, although there were tons of theorized backgrounds to him, even though the most official one is that he is the grandson of Commander Keen, who in turn is the grandson of B.J. Blazkowicz, the protagonist in the Wolfenstein 3D games. But those are, of course, another thing. Doom had you go through the Phobos base and then into the Los Demos facility. And you discover that you are, quote, hovering above hell. Which you then go into hell and literally lay waste to demons there. This would, quote, bring Deimos back, and Phobos would everything is back to normal. Or so you think. No, actually, while you were there, hell came to Earth. They killed your family, your fluffy bunny too, Daisy. And just as humanity seems to be at its loss, you ended up going into another mess, trying to rescue humanity, get them to a safe zone, or get them off the planet, get into hell again, and lay waste to hell again. And that is basically the story of Doom 2. And Doom 2 had some benefits over Doom 1. I mean, you had new weapons introduced. Well, one new weapon. You had new foes to face. And, well, in Doom, the initial three episodes of Doom, you up the maximum weapon the best weapon you could get. I mean, by the end of the first episode of Doom, you got the rocket launcher. By the end of that, by the end of the second one, the second episode, which I now forget the name of. You got the plasma gun, and then by the end of the last one, Inferno, I believe that one was called, uh, you have gotten the BFG. And then later, when it was released as Ultimate Doom, you got more fun stuff. Or you had tougher levels and certain enemies showing up way before they were supposed to. Yeah. And believe it or not, the iconic Big Bad from Doom that we all see, we think of certain things when you mention Doom, one of which is the Cyber Demon. He wasn't introduced until, well, he was the main boss, the final boss of the second episode, but not the quote big, not the big bad. But he became more iconic. And of course, with Doom 2, you now had him around. You also had the Spider Mastermind showing up. And as you worked through Doom 2, you came across nastier foes. I mean, Doom, the first episode, you didn't see all the foes that you could be facing. Oh, you didn't see all of them until you got to at least Doom 2 and Doom 3, Doom Episode 2 and Episode 3. Doom 2 gave you all of them and then some. I mean, you got a zombie commando that's carrying around a chain gun. You got lesser versions of the Barons called the Hell Knights. You got Revenants, which are nasty sons of guns. But you also got Pain Elementals showing up. Mancubi. Pain Elementals, those are lost soul generating machines. And things called Arachnotrons, which are mini spider masterminds, except they use plasma guns instead of chain guns. And to really add to things, you have the Archvile, which can revive the dead, given certain conditions. You get one new weapon, which is the super shotgun, which you can switch between by selecting, the key for the shotgun twice. But then you also had the ultimate boss, the Icon of Sin, which, in all talk, it's giant cosmetic, because the real target is, quote, John Romero's head on a spike, which you have to hit with like 2 rockets. That's the trick. It's a puzzle. You have to time your shots right to get the shots in there to hit him. And then you basically lay waste to hell. Now I'm going to take a moment, which showed the popularity of Doom at the time. Because it was so popular, they got either commissioned or got 2 guys to write the books. Writer David Abhu and Brad Linweaver. And you could see some trademarks they put in those books. I learned a long time ago, I learned prior to this that David had an affinity for Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth. And there was an early time. There was a time when I think he would sneak that reference into certain books. I mean, I know he put in a DS9 novel that I have, and he put it into the Doom novels as well. Now, in the Doom novels, your protagonist is Flynn Taggart. So their Doom guy has a name. Now, he's not, quote, alone in this. And instead of making these creatures hell spawn, they made them alien. And that we got mixed up in some sort of special war or something because we figured out slipgate technology. Well, not slipgate technology, teleporter technology. Sorry, I've been playing Quake lately, so I thought slipgate. And as we move through these games, what we end up dealing with are the books. The first two, sort of mirror the levels you go through, adding into meeting a second, you know, another another person. I believe they named her Arlene Sanders. Pardon me, I just wanted to say a different name there. And you got introduced to other characters who would show up as they are trying to, quote, stop this hell invasion on Earth. Now, there is a slight Mormon influence in the books as towards the end of the second original story, and we learn that the teleportation techniques does not necessarily shorten travel times. It affects, it's like time dilation. So they ended up in another world or something like that, far away from home, and then they had to come back, and they came back to Earth about 400 years later. Which is sort of a kick in the gut when you form relationships in the past. And I love in the books how what you had the Flynn and Arlene doing was they had a fun naming convention. The imps were called Spinies, which is sort of testament to what they did when they researched it. They were actually looking at terms that players used for these creatures, calling the cacodemons pumpkins. Even as scientists say, actually, that's a lot better sound, more descriptive sounding than what we're calling them. But in turn, these books they were an interesting take. And that's why I'm mentioning them here, because they are part of, in some ways, the Doom canon. Now, of course, after these books had come out, Final Doom came out, which was actually 2 megawads of designed by creators of the games and designed by their team, and they were a bunch of sadists, which was a 32 mission campaign. Well, 32 level, 30 regular, 2 secret, in which you're fighting through all these monsters and all that, and then you're back to, well, back to, and there has always been some debate that this was another Marine, but it's considered part of the Doom Guy lore. That he goes through and he kills all these buggers. ridding two more sections of demonic influence. And then finally, we find out not all was done up on Phobos. They deemed it all because of radiation and all that they never detected anything. But they've been busy up there. It seems the mother of all demons, quote, has been busy in recreating her horde, giving some creatures a drastic overhaul. Of course, this is when they released Doom 64, and this was strictly on the Nintendo 64 initially. Now, how do you look at it? Well, because they had this better technology, and that our computers hadn't reached this point of better graphics, they ran with it, and you got some frightening new looks to some creatures, like the Cyber Demon, the Imps, the Demons, and the Specters. Actually, the Specters were a remarkable upgrade. The Specters were all the ghostly seeming counterpart to the Pinky Demons, just known as demons, but called Pinkies. Which, yes, they would pay homage to that later. But the Imps looked nastier. The zombified soldiers looked grittier. The Caco demons had a significant change in how they look. The pain elementals now had two mouths to spit out lost souls. The Mancubi looked fiercer. The Arachnotrons looked way different. You had a new version of the Imp called the Nightmare Imp. The weapons looked better. And they added a new weapon. The Unmaker. This was the ultimate weapon. Now, yeah, the BFG 9000 was a bitchin' weapon. But the Unmaker was more powerful, didn't eat up cells as quickly as the BFG 9000, and when you found the, quote, demon keys, it actually made this weapon even better. Increased the power of the blasts, decreased the consumption of plasma cells. Multiple beams fired at once. This was the weapon. And if you didn't go to the secret levels in Doom 64, you would be able to access it at a later level in the normal game. Of course, you won't have all those keys either. And believe it or not, those demon keys actually did help you when you fought the mother of all demons, because you could seal off the summoning portals and then wipe her out relatively quickly. Although she had some bitchin' attacks. And when it ended, you've sealed off the portal from hell to earth. Well, you did from Hell's End, which was the only way to really be successful at it. So now you're going to clean up hell. It's sort of like that, like some of the old sayings that you see that get attributed to Marines, and I think a lot of them would agree with it. Marines don't die. They go to hell to regroup. And so that was actually where the original Doom franchise came to an end. I mean, there's not much to say about these games because they had the formula down right. It became a speedrunner's dream to try and get through the levels as fast as you can. Then it was get through them as fast as you can and get all the secrets. Get through them on the hardest setting with all secrets, or as fast as you can on the hardest setting. I mean, the game introduced nightmare mode to many a game. And Doom Nightmare Mode was literally the hardest setting with your enemies respawning. It was brutal. But they perfected the first-person shooter formula for the games at the time. I mean, Doom was a step up from Wolfenstein. And then the next step ups were, I think, Heretic and Quake after that. But this franchise really started it off. And they even added levels like in Doom 2. The secret levels reflected Wolfenstein. And even had Commander Keen in there. Kind of weird to be offering a clone of your ancestor. But you will find that the Doom franchise began here. And while it initially ended with Doom 64, when they released Doom Eternal, they released Doom 64 again, which, unless you had a Nintendo 64, you never got to play that game. And so many people didn't necessarily know it was part of the storyline of the franchise. They added lost levels to now connect Doom, the original Doom guy, with the Doomslayer of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. As Doom guy in the lost levels gets thrown out by the mother of all demons' sister. It was like the Resurrector or something that they named her. And now you have to fight your way back into hell and to continue laying waste to hell. And it seems they made one hell of an enemy for hell. As you go back in there, you kick butt. You were there to kick butt and chew bubblegum, and you have no bubblegum. Not that you really want to chew bubblegum. You want to freaking kill demon patootie. You want to wipe out every demon that has ever existed. Rip and tear. Now, for the basics of the time, the simplistics of it with the slightly less simplistic storyline. Because it played on, the storyline of Doom always played on, science doing something it shouldn't, all because the company says, we need this to make money, this will make us money. It's always been that. And we didn't often see science and religion get mixed. Although you did see a nice mixture of it with Deep Space Nine, but maybe that helped tell them it's time to do something like this and try something like this. And they were right, it was an excellent idea. It changed how gaming looked at things. You didn't have the term. We actually had a term for a while for first-person shooters as Doom clones. And for some people, it made them worry that when some other game went this direction, it would be just a, quote, clone of Doom. I mean, when the Metroid Prime series came out, they thought it was going to be a clone of Doom. But it worked great. Doom is a fantastic franchise. The Doom Guy part of it was a lot of people's introduction, as most of the Doom games got ported to other systems, with the exception of Doom 64. It remained exclusively on a Nintendo 64 until 2020, when Doom Eternal came out. So it was amazing. But of course, you could also see that maybe with certain titles, it was supposed to be end before now. I mean, Doom 2, they had a hit on their hands. Of course, they led into it because of how the ending of Doom, of the third episode of Doom. And of course, Doom 2, you end up wiping out the big nasty in hell. Doesn't necessarily say how you got back. I don't remember if it said it. Final Doom was, with that name, it has to be final. But then when they released Doom 64, they basically said what it was, and if you beat Doom 64, that was basically your final. Which would explain why Doom 3, when it came out, was a soft reboot of kinds. I haven't gotten to that one yet. Maybe in the near future. But this is where we stop with the Doom franchise for now. And once I get done with Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, I'll be doing a retrospective for them. And who knows, maybe even after I get done with those and I play Doom 3, I'll have a group retrospective for the series as a whole. But for now, the Doom Guy part of the Doom series, that's this retrospective, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to me ramble on about it, even the books. Because, in essence, they are part of the franchise. You can't say no to that. And if you want a good read, I do suggest getting them. I found them a very enjoyable read. And that's because of the mix they had of using fan names for the creatures and a captivating story for a point when we didn't know there was going to be more to the story. Now, if they're canon or not, you can't necessarily say. Of course, with dimension hopping and that, maybe they are canon. Who knows? But like I said, that's all I'm going to say about the Doom franchise, the Doom Guy part of the franchise. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and I do hope you check out some of the other videos I have up on the channel. But for now, this is Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X elsewhere. Goodbye, all.